So if you're here watching this video, it's because you want to plant watermelons, but you don't have a lot of space, you don't have a big farm or a decent sized homestead. You might live in town, in a neighborhood, in a subdivision, you've got a small yard. You might even live in an apartment complex or in townhouses or condos, and you've got a very limited amount of space. But still, you want to know if you can grow watermelons or anything else. And you're here because you want me to show you how to do that, how to get that done. Well, I'd say that's true for half of you. And I'm going to show you how to get it done. The other half of you are here because at surface value, you want to make it look like you want to have a garden. You want to grow watermelons, but you have limited space. You live in a house in a subdivision in town with a small yard. You live in an apartment, in a condo, in a townhouse area, and you have very limited space for growing. You're here because you want me to tell you that it's not possible. Which is it? Can you do it? Can you not? Well, you're both right. Because as with growing watermelons, and as is with life, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, either way, you're right. And I'm going to tell the story of two individuals with whom I have connections. One is an eternal optimist, one is an eternal pessimist. One was born into privilege and had the world at his feet and has spent more than 50 years doing nothing. The other was born into a good family, good working class, middle class family, but had some challenges. But despite those challenges, had a can-do, I can do it positive attitude, and well, went on to achieve quite a few things. Now, before I get into that, because most of you don't want to hear that, you're here for the watermelons, I'm going to show you how to do this first. What I've done here is I've picked off a section in one of my gardens, and what you'll see is the arrow is pointed at one fence post over there. The space between that fence post, there it is, and between this fence post is 8 feet, the distance, okay? Now, this fence up here, the distance between this fence and the tripod where the camera is sitting is 8 feet. So what I've done is I've simulated an 8x8 plot here to give perfect example of how even if you have limited space, you can grow watermelons. Okay, and you're going to be saying, oh, but wait, I thought watermelons vined out and they needed all this space to grow and lots of water. Yes, they do need lots of water, and yes, they do vine out, but you don't necessarily need to have that space to let them vine out, because if you clip those vines, prune them down as they grow, you will get fewer watermelons, and this works with pumpkins as well, and cantaloupes, any sort of melon type or squashy vegetable, but they will be more robust. They will be bigger, they will be juicier, provided you provide enough water throughout the process. Now, what I've done here is I've gone ahead and prepared my spot to keep this as short and sweet as possible for you. We have learned through years of gardening and homesteading and all these things that pulling weeds not just sucks, it's very time consuming. We enjoy being outside and having things to do outside, but pulling weeds isn't the most productive thing we can be doing outside. We have 6 acres and we have multiple gardens. We have enough stuff to take care of. We like to keep our lawn looking like a resort. So pulling weeds is the last thing we want to be doing. So we have learned to monopolize the use of any cardboard we get. Here's another great thing. As of this recording of this video, you might be stuck at home because of the coronavirus, COVID-19. We're supposed to be hashtagging stay at home with me and do anything. Well, hashtag stay home with me and plant watermelons. So you're bored out of your mind. You got cabin fever. You're looking for something to do and you thought of gardening. You can order these online. I ordered these from Amazon. They came in this box. I'm using the box to keep down the weeds. I've centered my box in the center of my 8x8 foot space. I've cut 4 different holes evenly in the boxes to plant my seeds, and the box will keep the weeds from growing up, so I won't have to weed in this area. And after a couple of weeding sessions, perhaps around the outer perimeter of the box, you know how hard it is to move your hand one direction while you're looking in the camera because everything's opposite. Here, okay. After I've done this twice, I won't have to do that anymore because the big leaves from the watermelons will cover the weeds. They won't be able to grow. So You don't need a tiller for the soil. You could use a shovel. I have a shovel, but I used a simple spade to show you how simple this is. All you've got to do is dig the soil up enough, make it loomy enough, just in this space. You don't need to come in here and plow the entire 8x8 section, because the plant you want to grow is going to be growing right here. Now you want to get down there about as deep as you can so that the roots don't have to fight solid soil as they grow. But if you go the length of a spade, that's plenty. I've done this before. This isn't my first rodeo. This works, okay? Now, I've done this on all 4 spots, and then from here, you simply open your watermelon seeds, and I'm going to plant 4 in each pod, so that'll give me a dozen seeds. But we're going to plant the first one here. Here's 4 beautiful little watermelon seeds. Now, a lot of people will poke holes. You can do that. Just poke holes with your finger, because these need to be about 1.5 inches deep, about 2 inches apart. Okay, and you simply go 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you cover it up like that. It is that simple. It's that simple. I'll water this here as soon as I turn the camera off, and I'll keep my eye on the weather. If it doesn't rain regularly, I will come out here and water them regularly. If it rains, when it rains, I won't water. Okay, you want to make sure not to overwater anything you plant, especially in its infancy. As the plants become stronger, as they age, they can handle more water. But you can literally drown your plants if you water them too much in the seeds or seedling form. Now, if you were here just to find out about how to do this, you're done. But if you want to know why, you perhaps will be able to do this. You'll be able to simulate what I've just done in your small yard that has limited space, and grow the most delicious watermelons you've ever had in your life. Yet the guy or the girl that lives right beside you never could. Here's why. As I mentioned earlier, it's because whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're absolutely right. I almost made this video yesterday, but I didn't, because I thought, you know, these are the kind of things that just don't need to be said. But obviously, we have a pretty large following here on our channel, and I thank each and every single one of you who come here regularly for the, as Paul Harvey used to call it, and our viewers are older, so you know exactly who Paul Harvey is, the rest of the story. I was thinking the other day about, well, just 2 different people with whom I'm associated. One I know personally, the other I don't, but we went to the same college around the same time and played sports at this college. Small college, little state college in West Virginia you've never heard of. I'll mention it, but I'm going to talk about the other guy first. You've never heard of this guy, and he's a good guy. He's good. He's nice. Wonderful person. But he's the type of guy that I have chosen to disassociate with the individual, and it's because of the negativity and the pessimistic attitude of can't do this, can't do that. If you're still here, if you came to actually see about the watermelons and you're still here because you wanted confirmation that you could not grow a garden in your limited space, not trying to be mean, as my 9-year-old son says to me just before he insults me, keep listening. There's been a lot of things in your life that you've said you can't do that you never did because you believed you couldn't do them. Let's change that today. Let's stop right now and start saying we can. And after this video, let's get outside like the other people who came here because they know they can, they just want to know how, who've already turned me off and are out there planting their watermelons in their backyard, even though their backyard's only 10 feet this way and 12 feet that way. Okay, this first guy, you've never heard of him. I wouldn't mention his name anyway because this isn't going to be very flattering. He's a good guy and he's very nice. But, you know, Kobe Bryant, rest his soul, and my heart, my thoughts, my prayers, my well wishes go out to people that actually knew him personally, his family, his friends. You know, he passed away recently in a horrific helicopter crash. And I saw something on the internet, some of his most famous quotes, his most well-remembered quotes, and one of them just really struck me in the heart. And I thought, you know, had I known Kobe, I think he and I would have really gotten along because we had a very similar mindset. What it said was, this is a quote from Kobe Bryant: "I have nothing in common with lazy people who spend their time coming up with excuses as to why they are not successful." Man, that was spot on. There are going to be people who will come to this video because They're bored. They got cabin fever. Somebody said, well, why don't you plant a garden? I mean, kudos to you for not going out and making unnecessary trips to the grocery store and the pharmacy. If it's an emergency, gotta go, you gotta go. And you're not gathering in crowds. Kudos and thank you, because I don't want what you might have, okay? So I'm avoiding those places too. Hashtag stay home with me and plant watermelons, okay? So you've come here and you want confirmation that you can't do it. You don't need it because you've already convinced yourself you can't, so don't, okay? So this guy, what's special about this guy? Nothing. He's spent more than 50 years doing nothing, even though he was born in an affluent area, to a middle-class professional family. He's very educated. He's above average intelligence. He's got multiple degrees from a very prestigious university, but has spent a lifetime coming up with every excuse as to why certain ideas won't work, so there's no need to even pursue an endeavor, okay? Here's a business opportunity, and instead of saying, okay, I'm going to make this work, how am I going to make this happen? He comes up with all the ways why it won't work, why it will fail, and just doesn't do it. And now if others have gone on and succeeded in those endeavors or other endeavors, he comes up with excuses or reasons why perhaps they had more privilege than he did. Maybe they were born into a wealthy family, maybe they had connections, but underneath it all, they aren't anywhere near as smart as him. They just got lucky, if nothing else. If they weren't born rich, if they were born poor and still became successful, it had to be because of luck. You know what the most dangerous thing about people like this is that attitudes are contagious. And if you spend time around people like this, that'll rub off on you. So be very careful. And once you spot these people as good, this guy's a good person and he's very nice, but I keep my distance. I want nothing to do with this individual because attitudes are contagious, okay? Now, I'm going to talk about the other guy. Who was this guy? Well, you never heard of him because he's never done nothing. The other guy, you know, he played football where I ran track and where I ran college. Very small college in West by God, Virginia. A place called Glenville State College, okay? Like the first guy I talked about, he was born into a middle-class family, more of a working-class family than professional. Higher education was not part of their, to my knowledge, wasn't big part of their background. This guy, he was of average athleticism, but he really thought in his mind he could be good. He thought he could be great, and he believed this. Problem was he wasn't very good at school, and it's not for a lack of trying. This guy was a hard worker. He had a can-do attitude. It wasn't me. Listen, I'm not talking about me. I did have a memory though when I'm planting this garden today, when I was thinking about, you know, using this instead of a shovel. Listen guys, true story. When I was 6 years old, I lived in a mobile home in West Virginia at the side of a rock quarry. It wasn't even a mobile home lot. That's just where we lived at that time. I had a grandmother, we called her Nana. She bought me a couple seed packets one spring when I was 6 years old, and she said, here, go plant a garden. I said, how am I supposed to plant a garden? She goes, go outside and dig in the dirt and bury the seeds. And I'm like, with what? We didn't have any tools. She said, use a spoon. I took a tablespoon and went outside, spent I don't know how long as a 6-year-old little boy moving rocks, moving stone, moving gravels at the side of a gravel pit, taking a tablespoon, digging into rock, or digging into soil that on top was granite hard. But I planted a garden and I grew radishes, carrots, and I grew watermelons, and it worked. I had limited space, I had terrible soil, and I dug my holes to plant my seeds with a tablespoon. But I knew I could do it, and I was right. I did it, okay? And now here 40 years later, I'm doing this stuff. I remember too, when I was thinking about that, now I'm going to get on with this other guy here in a minute. He's a lot more interesting than me. Somebody walked by, I was digging my holes. I guess I was digging them deep, and somebody said, kid, you keep digging that hole with that spoon, you're going to dig your way to China. Well, that gave me an idea. I wanted to go to China. I wanted to go see what China was like. What's China like? It's in Asia. I'm going to dig to Asia. So I'm digging and I'm digging and I'm digging and I'm digging. And people would come by, and here's this weird little 6-year-old kid at the side of a rock quarry coming out of his mobile home every day and digging with a spoon trying to go to Asia. You know what they said? That weird little kid out there digging that hole trying to dig to Asia said, you're never going to go to Asia, kid. You can't dig a hole to Asia. You can't find Asia on a map. You're a poor little kid in a trailer in West Virginia. You'll never see Asia. Well, I thought I could. I knew I could. I just kept digging. Took me 30 plus years to get there, but I spent 6 years living in Asia. Found a beautiful woman that lived there, married her, brought her home. Got a 9-year-old son. She's my wife. She's still the most beautiful woman I ever saw in my life. And we visited China together. I made my way to China because I knew I could. Now, back to the other guy. This guy really had to struggle to get through school. A lot of people just said, look, you're not college material. You're not going to go to college. Turned out he had dyslexia. He saw letters and numbers backwards. But instead of saying, like the first guy I mentioned, and this would have been legitimate, this guy could have said, you know what, I see letters and words and numbers backwards. I'm not college material. I can't go to college. Gosh, I can't do anything. I shouldn't even try. Guy didn't say that. He had a can-do attitude. He said, you know what, I'm going to have to work harder than my peers because I've got a disability that they don't have. Or I'm challenged. Okay, I hate that word, disability. You know, I just don't like that word. This guy had challenges. He met the challenge. He rose to the challenge. He still has his challenge. So I don't know if it'd be proper to say he overcame the challenge, but I'll say this. He meets that challenge every day and continues to meet that challenge, and he's continued to succeed. He made it to college, graduated high school, made it to college, wanted to play football in college. He was okay, but he wasn't that great. And his family had moved around during his childhood, and he actually graduated high school in Florida. Florida is a huge football state. If you know anything about football, Florida, Texas, and Pennsylvania, for some reason, produce the best high school football players in the country. So he didn't go to University of Florida. He didn't go to Miami. He didn't make it to Florida State. He wasn't a Seminole. He went to a very small state college in West by God, Virginia called Glenville State College. He played football there. I ran track there and I ran cross country there. That's where those of us who were kind of good in high school but not really, you know, we were not UVA material athletic wise. He ended up going there and he played football, okay? He was passionate about other things. He didn't drop out of college, so to say, because college wasn't for him or because he couldn't do it. I think by this point in his life, he had proven that there was nothing he couldn't do. If he wanted to do it, he didn't say, I can't plant watermelons in my yard because I live in a small subdivision and I've got a small yard and blah, blah, blah. He said, no, I can grow watermelons despite my limited space, and I can do anything else. I can graduate high school. I can make it to college, and I can do whatever I want. But he left college. He left playing college ball. Two things that they said he'd probably never do because he had challenges. He did them anyway. He went on. He got into other things. One of the things he really got into was acting. He found he was kind of a natural for this. He was gifted at this. Here he had an advantage. He had a bit of privilege in that he just had a natural gift for it. Problem? The challenge returned. When he started getting bigger auditions for bigger parts, bigger roles, he had scripts and he had problems reading them. You know what he did? He got help. They slowed down production. Sometimes he had to work harder than his fellow actors or actresses for the different productions because of his challenge, but he did it anyway. He did some plays. He made his way into commercials. He went on to be in some movies. This guy that grew up with a learning disability, a learning challenge, okay, who went to a small state college, same one I went to. I ran track. He played football. He never accepted defeat, and he never said, I can't. He said, I can. This is what I want to do. I don't care how many times I have to fail at it before I figure out how to succeed at it. I will. I can. And he did. Unlike the first guy who had the red carpet rolled out at his feet in so many ways, but never took advantage of the opportunities in front of him because he kept saying, I can't, this won't work, that's just not possible. You don't know who he is. I could tell you his name, you'd be like, who's that? You never know. The second guy I told you about who said I can and who did, his name is Channing Tatum. You've probably heard of him. You've probably seen some of his movies. His first big role was in Coach Carter, an excellent inspirational movie about I can. He was in Magic Mike. He was in 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street. Great guy. He's done great things because he knew that he could, despite challenges he faced. It's not about I can't, it's about I can. That's how you make things happen. Thanks for joining us. See you again next time.